Okay, now in the last session, we were talking about what is plugin and how to use a plugin, and we saw the structure on how to call a plugin in terms of we have to give the details about what is the plugin and then when to call the plugin and what exactly the plugin has to do, right? So we were giving all those details. And with that, we saw a couple of examples, and also we saw how to call a plugin, attach it to a phase, as well as how directly we can call a plugin. So to continue, now when we were defining a project, we used to see that the version of the project used to call as a snapshot, right? So let's try to understand first what is a snapshot and why is that we have been giving that as the name. So if you have not seen it, let me open the project. This was the project that we had. And if you see, the version that we gave was 1.0-snapshot. So what does the snapshot represents? Because by default, if you do not give any value, this will be the standard value. So what exactly is a snapshot? To understand that, now let's first understand what will happen if I use a version number. Now, whenever you say you are going to identify a project, you are basically going to give a machine, or particularly, let me say that in this way. Okay, so you have a project, and in that project, if you want to work, then only while the time you are going to do a release, that is when you have to go to the customer and give it to him, only that time you will be giving a version number to identify. So that way, only when a product is going to the market, you will be giving a version number attaching to it. But until then, we will be actually doing a development work where the files can be modified several times and the product can be built several times. So that is when we are trying to do a product or a build of a project, and before going it to the customer, we will not be giving it a version number. What will happen if I give a version number is, now let's say for each build that I'm doing, if I give a version number, then each of the jar files that I'm creating will be coming with the name of that version number, because the standard that we use in Maven is, what is that? We will be putting it as the project name version dot jar. So that way, now let's say you are creating a build of a project. Okay, let's say there is a project A gets built, and what will happen for that project, you will have a file created, that is the jar file created, and that will have some version number. Now let's say I call this version 1.0.jar, and then after some time, if I rebuild it again, then I have to increase the version number, then it will become 1.1.jar. Like this, every time if I do a build, I have to keep changing the number if I'm giving a version number to identify. The problem with these kind of things, what will happen is, on the other side, if you have a dependency of this project, now let's say there is a project called project B, and to create this, it has a dependent on the a.jar. So that way, now in this project, how is that you are going to tell among these files which one is it independently required? And every time if you are going to change this, then every time all the dependencies of the project has to be updated. So like this, if there are more than one project which is dependent on this particular a.jar, then for each one of them you have to specify the exact location on what jar it is and what you have to increment it. So that way it will not be good to give a version number for a project which is under development, because you cannot specify the dependency, and every time if you are trying to rebuild this, you will get a new file name, and correspondingly you have to update everywhere wherever it is dependent. So instead of using this version number incrementing or a specific version number, what we can do is, in Maven we will use a standard version number called a snapshot, which will be used for all the development project. Development means until you are going to do the release of that project, whatever development activity is happening, for that we simply create a version called snapshot, and this is how it is going to be. So now if I name this version as 1.0 snapshot, no matter how many times I rebuild, it is the same file it will be created, and I don't have to update this again and again because I have rebuilt. And also, anytime if I update it, the previous file will be overwritten with the same file. So these dependencies will also take the latest project. So such a kind of special version is what we call it a snapshot, where basically it indicates that you are working on a project which is still under the development activity. And only when you are going to release the project, you will be using a version number. So pretty much at the end, probably by next session, I'll be showing you how to do the release. And in that, what is that we have to do to update the version, and after updating the version we'll be doing the release. But until then, whatever development activity we are supposed to do, where we might be building a project multiple times, and if it has a dependency, then it's always better to go ahead with the standard version name called as snapshot. Okay, so remember, a version is given only for a release. For any time other than that, we will be using the snapshot as the standard name. Getting it? Hello? Can you guys hear me? Hello? Okay, so suppose if you get a question on the interview, what is snapshot and why do we need? Simply the answer is, a snapshot is just a special version which indicates that you are working on a development copy, and you will be giving a version number only when we are going to do a release. Okay, so to move ahead, now going back to the project, now what is the standard we have to follow if you are using Maven? Can someone quickly say that? So if I'm creating a Maven project, what and all are the mandatory things I need? What is the standard we have to follow? I'm waiting for an answer. If I'm creating a Maven project, what is the standard that I have to follow? Hello? Okay. Guys, it'll be really good if you guys can talk so that I will know whether you guys are understanding or not. Okay. So yeah, that's correct. So we need to follow the directory structure. That is the standard. Okay. Now in this, in the production, if you go into the src main, and inside this, you will be putting all the Java files, correct? Now, let's think of a project where there are several components in the project. For example, as I was saying that you might be having a project for calculator creation. Okay, assume that the project is calculator. Now in that, you have various features. One is addition, subtraction, deletion. Now, for each one of them, there might be a separate developer who is working. And then for each of the component or that particular feature, you might be having many files which you want to work. So that way, now, if you follow the standard directory structure, what is it going to happen? Now, they have to put all the files into the same directory, because so far that is what I've been saying, right? So what will happen in that way? Now, this directory will contain all the files from all the four components or whatever components, as well as all the files of them will be put here. Now, because of that, if a developer has to create a build, now he cannot just build only the component that he wants, because by default, if you say Maven compile, whatever files it is there, it is going to pick everything. So that way, if for a developer to test or verify, he cannot just test only one particular component. The same thing, if something is going to fail, then commonly it will fail across everything. So that is when it will be difficult for a developer to do his development activity, where if he has to put everything into the single directory. So what is that we can do? Because there are two things that we need. One, from a developer perspective, where he should be able to do the development only for his component, and then he should be able to build only his component. As well as when we look at as a complete product, we should be able to build everything together. So you need to solve both the requirements, where if a developer wants, he should be able to build the components alone, or choose only a certain particular files which he is interested to work on and compile only that or build only that. As well as when we want to do the build for giving it to QA, we can create, or we should be able to create the complete product. So how is that you're going to solve this? So in order to work on this, Maven gives us an option called modules or multi-modules. So what exactly it is? Now, rather than putting up everything into a single folder called src, main, Java, and all the files, what Maven does is it will be separating your project into modules, where in each of the module, you will be having a separate folder structure which we need for Maven, and because of which each component can be treated as a mini Maven project or a separate Maven project. So that way, from the complete project, you can have several components, and each of the component will be treated as a separate Maven project. So that way, now, if you want, a developer will go into that particular directory related to the component, and he will do the changes only in that, and when he creates the build, only for that the build will be run for Maven. So to show you that, so let me delete this target. Okay, now the parent project what we have is demo. So in this, suppose if I want to create a module, let's say I'll call it as module 1, then this module 1 will have a separate src folder under pom.xml. So that is how, when you look now, this is going to be treated as a separate Maven project, because anything which has a standard directory structure of Maven, that is src main and src test, as well as a pom.xml in the same directory, then it is going to be treated as a Maven project separately. In the same way, now we can create as many modules as we want, where each one of them will be treated as a separate module, where if you go inside it, each one of them is a specific Maven project. Okay, so that is how now you can segregate and allow the users to choose which module or the component that he or she is interested to work, and in that they can do the changes and use the pom.xml specific to this and build the project that is only for this component. So that's how, for a developer, it will be most useful to split the project into component, wherein since we want Maven to work, we want to follow the directory structure as well as the pom.xml. So that is why each of the module will be having separate Maven standard directory structure as well as the pom.xml related to it. Okay, so now quickly let me modify this file based on our requirement. Now it has all the plugins. For time being, I'm not interested in any of the plugins. The only thing that it is going to have is the GAV and the default properties. Now, in this, I'll try to change the name of our artifact from demo to module 1. Okay, same way, I'll change the name here also. Now what this means? Now this is a new project and it has a specific GAV where the GAV is Vesva mod 1 and the 1.0 snapshot. That is the version. And the name of this project is mod 1. So this way, now if a particular user wants to work on module 1, sorry, it is module 2, then he will be coming into it and he will be trying to change the files and store everything inside this directory structure. And based on that, when he calls this pom.xml, it will automatically pick the files from this and do the build. Okay. Same way for others also, you can just go in and change the details here. And I'll remove this also. If needed, we can keep, but for now to understand the concept, I'm going to remove this. Okay, now this is the pom.xml specific for a project called mod1. Same way, this is a pom.xml which is specifically for your module 2. Getting it? So like this, now multi-modules is all about splitting your complete project into smaller components where each one of them can be treated as a separate project. Now let's try to do the build and see how it is going to work separately. So if I want to do the build of module 1, then I'll go inside the module 1 because we always have to run the Maven from the same directory where you have the pom.xml. So in this, we will say Maven, and let's say if I say package, then what it is going to do, it is going to consider the files only under the module 1 folder. Okay, and based on that, it is going to compile, and correspondingly, you will get a new jar file that is module 1-1.0 snapshot. Same way, if you want to build module 2, now whatever files that you have specified within the module 2, it is going to pick, and correspondingly, it is going to build. Okay, somewhere I've given wrong. This is module 2. Okay, I didn't change here. Okay, module 2. And this is module 1. Okay, now let me do a clean and then create. So now this way, when you run, it is going to pick up the files specifically from that project or that component folder, and it is going to build a component specific to that. So you can see under module 1, you have one jar file. Same way under module 2, you will have a specific jar file. So this is how we will be able to build the project separately, and whatever changes is needed, we'll be putting it only under the SRC of that particular module. So that way we can keep the modules separate, and as needed, we can build these components separately. Getting it? Getting it? Now, which one did you didn't understand? Can you please say? That's why I'm trying to ask. Please let me know if something is not clear. Which part is not clear, Kavya? Hello? Okay, see now, earlier, what is that we did? if you want to work on Maven, we had to create a directory structure called src main, and as well as you had a separate pom.xml, correct? But now, what is that we are doing? Instead of keeping in the same directory, if I want to split it into components, then each component or the module, I will create it with the same directory structure. And in that, what I did is I simply copy pasted the file. Okay. Now, by copy pasting the file, I just renamed only the name of your artifact from the demo to the respective module on which you are working. So that's the only change I did. So whatever earlier we had as the parent project, for that, whatever that we had, I just changed only the name of the artifact, because now if you see, Maven is quite easy to modify at anything that you need. So rather than creating something freshly, I just copy pasted the existing one and changed the name of the module that I'm working. So that is how. Now from this project, if you look, it looks as a parent project called demo, but inside it you have two components or modules where you can individually choose, and if needed you can build it, because as a developer he will be working on a particular component, and if he wants to verify anything, he's going to just create a module with the same directory structure and a pom.xml. So I'm just reusing the same sample that we have created, in which the name of the module has been changed. That's the only thing I did. Getting it? Other than that, I didn't change anything else. So because of this, now if you look, I can go inside any particular module, and if I say Maven package, it is going to build only that component and not the complete project. So that's the advantage, where we are going to split the project into smaller and smaller components, and in that each of the module will be treated as a separate project. Okay, so that is what the first thing that we will see. Is it clear for everyone? Okay, now with that understanding, what will happen is, now let's say that we are working on a project where we have 10 modules. Okay, and all the 10 modules now is dependent, where each of the project will be taken care by one developer and they'll be working onto it. Now what will happen in that is, when one developer is working, there might be a dependency of one module on another module. Or when I was explaining the snapshot, I was trying to tell that there is a project which is dependent on another project, right? So those kind of scenarios will happen when you have a component and that is dependent on another component. So what is that we have to do during that cases, where first we need to know how is that you're going to specify the dependency in Maven, where you can specify a dependency of a module or a different project or a plugin. Everything is going to be the one and same. So that is when you are trying to define a dependency, how will you identify a project in Maven? It is using the GAV, or the group ID, artifact ID, and the version. So only with that we will be identifying a project, right? So that way, if we have a dependency of one project on another project, then whatever is the dependent project on that, we will put the dependencies GAV into it, so that it will be trying to use it whenever you want to run the build. Okay, so to understand that, now let's say on these two components, where is that? So now we had this component called module 1 and module 2, right? Suppose if one of them is dependent on the other, then how is that you are going to specify that one module is dependent on other module? So in order to work, now let's say if module 2 is built, then module 1 is dependent on module 2. So before you build the module 1, you have to build the module 2. So that is the dependency that we want to check, where if you want to set such a dependency, then what we will be doing is you will go to the particular module, and in that open the form.xml, and in this you can see that there is already a tag. In case if you do not have a tag, then all the dependencies should be put under a tag called dependency. And inside that, each of the dependent module or the project or the plugin that you are going to use will be specified using the dependency tag. Just like how we did on build plugins and plugin when we are defining a plugin, same way here, if you have a dependency for this project, everything will be put under a tag called dependencies, and under that, each specific dependency you will be put it using this keyword called dependency. Okay, so that way now there is already a default plugin which is dependent for this project, which means when you are running this module 1, it is dependent on a default JUnit module which is used for doing the test. So when we are actually doing a unit test, internally it is going to call a tool or a utility called JUnit. Using that, it will be running the unit test of our test files. Okay, so this is the default dependency. But along with it, if you want to add another dependency, then you go to the project which it is dependent on. And in my case, if this project is dependent, then take the GAV of this and put it here under the dependency. So create a new tag called dependency, and inside that you put it. Okay, so this way what I'm saying is, for this project or the module called module 1, when you do the build, it requires two dependencies, where this is one dependency and the other one is this dependency. Okay, so now let's try to do the build of the module 1 and see how it is going to work. Now first let me do a Maven clean and then package. So what is happening? Now basically it is trying to give a error. So what is the error? It is saying that it cannot find the dependencies, that is module 1.jar. Now, why is it saying it is not able to find? Because we have given it here, right? Because of the project definition where we have said this module is dependent on this module, which could be a plugin or a jar file, whatever it is. We are saying that anything with this name, if you find, that has to be used for building this project. That is what we have said. But it is not able to find, and it is saying that it could not resolve the dependency because it could not find the artifact. Artifact means it is not able to find the module 2 1.0 snap.jar. That is what it is literally trying to say, that it is not able to find that jar file. But if you look, where is the jar file available? The jar file is available here, right? This is the jar file that it is trying to search for, isn't it? It is the same GAV and you're trying to refer to this, and this is available here. But why is it saying that it is not able to find the dependency? So to understand now, let's go back to the very basics of Maven architecture. So when you run Maven, what is the first thing that it does? When you run the lifecycle of Maven, what is the first thing that Maven does?
It will create a home directory Then it will store the all the dependency downloaded from remote or
Exactly. It's not the home directory, but you're going to collect the list of sources and the resources. Correct? So that way, when the project is running, what it is doing is we have specified for this project called module 1, I have a dependency where this is the dependency for which it is trying to search for the name called module 2 1.0-snapshot.jar. So this is the name of the file, which is a dependency which it needs. This is one among the resources. Okay. After taking the list of resources, what is it going to do? You said it is going to download, but before downloading, what is it going to do? Can you recall this? As I said, after generating the list of dependencies or the sources, it is going to connect to the local repository directory. In that, it will search whether the dependency, whatever you have specified, is available in here. Suppose if it is not available, then it will go to the internet and try to see whether it is available. And if it is available, it is going to download from here to here, and then it will try to use it. Getting it? But now, in our case, why is it failing? Because, first of all, this particular module 2 1.0 snap.jar file, where exactly is it available? Is it available in the local repository as of now? No. Where is it available? It is available under this folder. Is this our local repository? No, right? So that is how it is not able to find this file in the local repository. And then, since it is not able to find, it is going to the internet and trying to download it. And in the internet, will you have any file by this name? Obviously not, because it is some dummy project that I've created. So there will be no such file in the internet also. So because of this, the Maven is not able to find the file in local repository as well as in the remote repository. It is saying that it is not able to find the artifact. So what is that we have to do? Now, from wherever directory in which you have this particular jar file, now if we copy this to the local repository, then after this, when you run your project through Maven, Maven will be able to pick the file from the local repository. Correct? Because when the file is available here, the Maven will know that the resources, whatever it has collected, is available in the local repository. Correct? So, how do you do that copy? So, instead of we copying only manually, that is when we will go back to the workflow where we will be using this phase called install, where after creating a package, you copy the package or the artifact that you have created from that project directory to the Maven's local repository. So that is when we will be using install, where whenever there is a dependency of the current project, then that project file has to be copied to the local repository. So that's when, before we run, we have to make sure we will go to module 2, and in the module 2 we will do maven install. So now what it will do, whatever the module 2 hyphen 1.0 snapshot.jar is created, that will try to copy to the local repository. That is what we call it as installing. So you can see now the file from the module 2 target folder is being copied over to the local repository, which is available under the .m2 folder of my home directory. Okay, so because of which now what we have done, we have pretty much copied the file from our local repository, that is that workspace where you have created the project file. From here we have copied or installed it to the local repository. So that way, now if I go back to module 1 and if I run maven package, It will try to take a list of resources, and that, since it is available on the local repository, it is going to pick it up and it is going to create the module 1 hyphen 1.0 snap.jar. Getting it? On what exactly is dependency and how you will specify the dependency, and then based on the dependency, how is that you will make the file available in the local repository. Now, did you get what is the requirement of install phase? Hello, Vinay, Sayed, Kavya, are you getting it? Vinay, guys, is that clear? Kavya, Vinay, I'm asking you guys. Okay, anyways. So now, what is that we did? So we saw that how is it we are going to give a dependency of a project. So now, coming back to our project as it is. So now we have a parent project called demo. Inside that, we have two modules called module 1 and module 2. In that, we have specified a dependency where if you want to build module 1, first module 2 has to be built, and then it has to be installed into the local repository. And after that, when you run module 1, you should be able to build it. Okay, so that now for an individual developer, he can go completely inside it, do the changes that he wants, and he wants to build only this, then he will run the pom.xml inside this. Same way, if a user is interested to work on this, he will modify and create the files in the same directory structure under this, and using the pom.xml for this, he will be doing the changes and he will be building. Where based on the dependency, it will build. But coming back as a complete project, now if I have 10 to 50 components like this, then how is that I'm going to create a complete project? Literally, now I cannot keep going inside one by one and create the whole project, isn't it? Because just for two, it is okay. But let's say if you have 25 components, then you have to go inside each of the component and then you have to run Maven package or Maven install so that it copies the file and does the build. Then the second problem is you should be knowing what is the build order based on the dependency, correct? Suppose by mistake, if you run the module 1 first, then it will not run because before you run the module 1, module 2 has to be built and then module 1 has to be built. So that way, when you have dependencies of the project, what is that we are going to do? So pretty much we need to work as a project, that is a whole project, where if Maven is smart enough in which either it can help us in doing the build separately, that is per component, or if needed, it should also be able to handle the complete project as it is. Okay, so that is when the next thing that we want to know is if it is a specific component that you are interested, you can go inside and do the build. Whereas if we want to build the whole project, considering all the dependencies also, wherein the Maven should be taking care of the complete build order as well as all the dependencies. Then what we will do is we will try to create a pom.xml once again for the parent, because until now we had only a pom.xml for only the source directory, where this pom is going to act as a project pom for this particular project or module. Whereas now we can create one more pom where I can put it into the parent project, so that this particular pom that we create now here will be acting as a parent pom, and the purpose of that pom file is to handle these two modules. So in that pom we will tell what and all are the modules that it has to take care, and what is the build order that it has to take care, and automatically Maven will take care of the dependencies, and it will try to build completely as a one project. Okay, so that is when, let's see on the second scenario where how we can create the complete project as one. So for that, first let's create a parent project pom inside our project folder. So in this, I've already created this long back, right? I just stored it in the same way. So now if I just save this, let me just rename it to demo. Okay, and the name of your project is also demo. So now if I save, you can see you got a pom.xml. So this is nothing but the parent pom. But what is the necessity of this? When you say you have a pom.xml, then it is needed to specify or tell to the Maven on where is your source code available and where is the output that you have to put. So if you don't specify anything, then it will take everything by default. And in that way, now this pom is related to the src folder and the contents, or vice versa. Same thing, this pom is related to src. So only with that we will specify everything. But now if you see, for this pom there is no src, which means now this pom.xml is used only for triggering the build. What it means is, if I want to build all the project, then you need to choose a particular phase of the compilation or the test or package, right? So that phase you will tell to the parent pom, and this parent pom will pass it to all the modules that you have under the project. And in that, it is not just going to run blindly, but specifically it is going to create the build order based on whatever components you have, how many modules you have. Based on everything, it is going to create a list on what is the order that it has to work, and then it will do the build. So that way, remember, this pom is the parent pom, and it is not going to do any build. The task of this pom is whatever options that I pass. If I go to this directory and then if I say maven package, it is going to take that command and go into each one of them and call the same maven package inside it, where it will not blindly call, but first it will create the build order and then put everything based on that. Okay, so to specify that this pom is not an ordinary pom.xml, but a parent pom, where it has to only pass the details to the child, because for this project this is the parent pom, and this pom inside the module are called as child pom. So it is used only for handling the data from the parent to the child. So that way, how do you differentiate between a parent pom.xml and a child pom.xml is, in the parent dot, that is parent pom.xml, now you will not be having the packaging type as jar. Okay, because I am not creating any jar here. I am creating a jar using this. I am creating a jar using this pom, but using this pom I'm not creating any jar, but I am just trying to call these two modules. So that is when we will replace this string called jar or whatever it is and put a word called pom. So now in any Maven project, if you see a pom.xml in which the packaging specifies it as POM, that means it is not used to create any jar file or a var file, but it is going to act as a parent POM through which you will be calling another child modules or child pom.xml. Okay, so that's when sometimes this pom.xml is called as super pom and these ones are called as child one, or this is the parent pom and these are child poms. Okay, so now how is that you are going to specify what are the modules that you are going to work through this? So now in order for this pom to completely understand this module as well as understand the dependencies of this module, now we have to create a parent and a child relationship. So for that, first in the parent POM, you will define what and all are the modules that this parent should handle. Okay, so that way, first thing what we will do is in the parent, you will have a keyword called modules. So you will be specifying all the modules that you have to specify from this particular parent POM. You will do it by putting the value under modules. So now in this, if I particularly create a tag called modules, because if I have more than one modules, then I'll put it under modules. Okay. So now under this, each module that it is going to be dependent, we will put it. And now, what is the name of the module that we have to specify? It is this directory name, which is going to act as the module for your parent. So here, I'll say module 1, module 2, sorry, module, and module 2. So which means now, this is a parent POM whose responsibility is, if you pass any goal name to this, it is going to take it and run to these two, where it should not run blindly, but it should read all the information from this, understand the dependency where what is dependent on other one, and based on that, it has to do the build of the dependency first and then come back and do the actual build of the other component. So in order to know in the same way how we have defined here, we have to go to the child pom.xml and tell the information about the parent. Okay, so to do that, what we have to do is you have to go to each of the module or the child pom, and in that you will create a tag called parent and give the GAV of the parent pom.xml, so that you're going to give a complete relation between the parent and the child or the module. So now go to the parent POM, take the GAV of this and go to each specific module. So this is what I have already opened, right? Module 2. In this, anywhere, you just create a tag called parent, and inside that you add this value, and then you're going to put this value. Same way, go to the other module, and in that also you have to give it. So this way, what we have done is we are telling to this particular pom.xml that there is a parent pom for you, and anytime if it is trying to ask some information, share everything about you. That is what simply it means. So the same thing we say here, and now we are defining here that for this parent, these two are the modules which you have to handle. So now if I do a build, that is from my parent folder, if I call Maven package or anything, whatever goal that you are passing, it will go inside each one of them and run. But before that, it will try to generate the build order in which it has to run. And then it will run, because in my case, Module 1 is dependent on module 2. So module 2 has to be run first and then module 1 has to run, right? So Maven is smart enough now by giving the parent and the child relationship, by giving the details on the parent POM as well as on the module POM. What Maven will do is it will consider these two modules, and among this, it will try to create the build order where the build order is first module 2 and then module 1. Okay, so that way it will create the build for all the modules in your project, where now it is our dependency where I want to build only one module, I can build, whereas if I want to build everything, I can still build it. Okay, so let's try that. So now I am outside the module folder where exactly the parent pom.xml is. So from this, if I call a command that is a goal, the same thing will be passed on to everything. So I cannot just give a package. Why? Because if I give a package, first it will create a build order. In that, it will build module 2. But whatever the new file that you have created for module 2, you have to install it, right? So that is how whatever that you want to pass, you have to pass it to the parent directly. So now if I say install, it will pass the same thing to all the modules, in which first it will compile and create the module 2 package. That latest one will be installed to the local repository, and then followed by the dependent, it will be running this module 1. Okay, so now watch it carefully. First, it is going to create a build order, and based on that build order, it is going to run. So the first thing that it is doing now is it is generating the build order. How did it generate? It is because you have given what and all are the modules in your parent.xml, as well as in the child, you have given the details about what is your parent. If someone comes up, you have to give all the information. So that's how the first thing Maven does in a multi-module is it will try to take all the modules that you have specified, and in that, whatever dependencies that it has, it will try to take everything. Okay, and then based on that, it is going to pretty much now do the steps one by one. So as part of that, first thing what it is going to do, it is going ahead with the module 2. Okay, so in the module 2, it is running the Maven install. So for install, it is going to call first the resource generation, compile, testing, and after testing, it is going to do the jar file creation, and this package which has been created is installed or put into the local repository, and then it goes ahead to the other module in the order, that is module 1. In that, it goes ahead and does the build. Now whatever this resources which is needed for this module 1 is always available on the local repository, so it will go ahead with the build and complete it. So that is how, when you have multi modules, you can create a parent and child relationship by creating a parent pom.xml, which we call it as a super pom. But the difference is, in the parent pom, there will be no details about anything other than you replace the packaging with the string called pom, where it indicates that you are not using it for doing any build, but just passing the values to the child. So that way, what and all are the modules part of this, you will specify inside the modules folder. And similarly, to have a both relation, you will go to the child or each module, and in that you give the GAV of the parent. So you see, the keyword is changing, but everywhere you are going to refer to the same GAV. Even for the dependency, you are going to refer the same GAV. So GAV is the only way how you track or identify a project in Maven. So it could be a plugin or it could be a project. Anything that you are trying to refer in Maven as a project will always be referred for the GAV of it. Getting it? So that now, let's say I want to build only a particular module, then rather than going inside, you can simply use a command called -pl, and if you say a module name, it will build only that. So rather than going inside everything one by one, if let's say a developer wants to do the test of only particular module, what you can do is you can just say Maven, whatever goal you want to call, and then say only the module name. Now let's say I want to build only module 2. Then in this, using the same way, it will handle only module 2. So that is how even a developer or a user doesn't have to go to that specific directory and call. Now with the parent pom.xml, you can handle both. So if your choice is a particular module, then you just say pl and give the module name, and it will pass the same phase or the command that you have given here to that particular module. As well as if you want to build the complete project, then you just say the goal name, whereas it will create the build order, and in the build order it will check for the dependencies, and based on that it will build it. Getting it on what is a multi-module, how do you set a dependency, and how practically you'll be running a multiple module, wherein if we want we can run it as a single module, or we can run it as a whole project where Maven is smart enough to understand all the dependencies. The same thing now, if we are going to use any other tool, think about how many lines of code you have to write, wherever you have to modify it and keep it educating that this is the dependency. Whereas in Maven, the only thing if you can follow on a multi-module is if you can create a parent POM, and in that put the modules which is dependent, and majorly replace the packaging word with the POM, and in each of the child or the module project, in that particular pom.xml, give the GAV of the parent using the keyword called parent. Getting it? Any questions? Is that clear? Hello?
Hello, Adam.
Yes.
Yeah, but the thing is next one. If it is not available in locally and as well as centrally, how we can store the all dependency? I mean the jar files or plugins you are saying, like internal repository. Can we explain? I mean, can you are going to explain that one also? I mean internal repository, artifactory or something you are saying, like initial time.
No, no, can you repeat
That
it?
is the dependency management, right? First it will search and local repository, then it will go central repository. If it is not there, then we are maintaining all the private jar files in our one location, like the tools we have, right? The Nexus, I mean this one, Artifactory.
Yes.
Are you going to explain? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk about
Are
that.
you,
I'll come later.
okay.
That is, when do you put
Okay.
it?
Okay. That is, I mean, reply, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll come to that one by one. But before that, is it clear on what is a multi-module and how will you handle it? Nageshwar, Kavya. Okay. Okay, let's take another example now. Now let's say you are creating a web application and you want to put it into a web server. Basically, if someone says that you want to deploy your project. Now, a deploy can have several meanings. One of the common thing that you have to do is deploy means there will be a production server on which you have to put your package or application that you have created, and you have to copy that. Sorry, Kavya, any questions? Something is not clear before I jump on to next topic. Okay, try to go through this video once again, but at least for now, are you clear with the concepts what I'm trying to tell you? Maybe later, once again, if you go through that completely, it should be good. But as of now, at least is it clear on what is modules, how you will be using, what is the scenario that you want to use, and if needed, how Maven can handle it? Yeah, definitely. You have to practice. So I'll be going ahead one by one, wherein we'll be adding more and more on top of everything. That is why I keep saying that please go through regularly, and whatever that we are doing, I'm trying to cover from the basics to advanced level. So with the help of everything what we are doing, we'll be adding up one by one. Okay, fine. So now what I was explaining you is, now sometimes there would be a requirement for doing a deployment. So what do you mean by deployment is, you have your project deliverable or an artifact, which could be a jar or a var. Now, if you want that to be put into a particular production place from which you will be able to access, right? Because when you say a product, you cannot just directly access the file. You need to run it. So specifically, if it is a web application, now you need to put it under a tool called web server. Okay, so there are different or various web servers like Apache web server, or you might have heard about WebSphere or Glassfish, JBoss. Like that, there are many web servers available where in a company they will be using any one of the web server where you want to put your particular application or the artifact that you have created inside it, and using that you will be able to access your project. Okay, so a web application means you need to access it from web. So for that, you cannot directly access it through web. So basically you should need a web server. Through that web server you will be able to access it. So first thing what we need to do is, when we say a deploy, you have to take your artifact or a deliverable and you need to put that file or simply copy that file into a machine in which you have installed a particular web server, so that when you run your application you will be able to access it using website or using a URL. So when you have such a kind of scenario, then you will be doing a deployment. Now I'll show you one example where if you want to connect to a web server called as JBoss. Okay, JBoss is again a Java based web server or an application server which is used to deploy projects, and you can access the web pages that you have in your project using it. So now if you want to do such a thing, then once again you have to go back to the plugins. Now if I want anything to be done apart from our regular workflow of Maven's lifecycle, then we saw in the previous class you need to use a plugin, and based on that you have to use. So my requirement now is, I want to connect to a tool called JBoss, or I want to connect to a application server called JBoss, and whatever the jar file that we have created, I should be putting into it. That is what we call it as deployment. So if you have such a requirement, the first thing that we need to do is we need to add a plugin, correct? So first, for those who don't know, first thing what we have to do is we have to go and search for the plugin that is available specifically for that tool. So that case, now I will search for the JBoss Maven plugin. Okay. So once again, every plugin will have a home page. So if you go to that, you will be having the details about how to access it. And that way, go to the usage page, and that will give you the details on what are the structure that you have to use and the examples. Okay, so in my case, I am interested to actually deploy a particular application to this JBoss application server. So what is that application? Whatever jar file that I'm going to create, I'm interested to deploy. So that way, now you can see that we are going to follow the same structure as we did last time. And in that, we are going to specify the GAV and all the other details, correct? So now you have to go through this and specify. Now, the same thing for simplicity, or to make it simple, I've already written where. Now let us take this and copy to any one of the module and try to run. So let's take module 2. Okay, and in that, now if you want to add a plugin, what will you do? Pretty much anywhere within your project file, you will add this. Now if you just go back and try to refresh, every plugin should begin with build, and then it should have plugins, and in that every plugin you are using will be under a plugin tag. So since we are using only one plugin in this, because I deleted all the previous one that we had last session, so this time I have only one plugin, so I'm giving it here. So for this, first thing you need to tell what is the plugin, right? So that way we are saying this is the GAV of the plugin that it has to take. Next thing, you have to tell when to use, but I have not told when to use. So this way, now by default, I can call this plugin directly, because I am not interested to be calling this part of any of the life cycle, because it is my requirement where if I want, I should be able to call it. So I don't want to attach it to any of the plugin. I mean, any of the life cycle phase of Maven. So that way, I'm not giving any phase attached to it. Then the third thing which we have to give is what exactly the plugin has to do. So that we will give using the configuration tag. Okay. So in this, now for the JBoss application server, you need to give certain data where first thing you will say, where is your JBoss home located? So basically, I have installed the JBoss in this particular directory. Okay, so I am going to use this. So I'm saying that I am using JBoss application server, which is installed in this directory. And then what is the server that you are going to use? I'm going to say it is a default. And then now, what is the file that you want to deploy? So I will give the GAV of that file once again, so that it will automatically take which file? It will take module 2-1.0 snap.char automatically. So that now when I call this plugin directly, it will connect to this JBoss server, and it will copy this file from your current build location to this particular location where the JBoss is running. Okay. So again, the application server will be maintained by someone else or a separate IT team. We have to take care of only connecting to it and deploying into it. So that way, now let's not worry about too much on how to start, but I'm just trying to show you for your practice. Okay, so I've already installed it and this is available in this location. So what I'm going to do is I'll go to this directory. So basically I'll go to this directory. Okay, actually I've not installed here. Let me take it up. Downloads. Just a minute. Let me have a quick search. Okay, it's here. Okay, this is where I have my particular JBoss. So I'm going to use this. Okay, so this is the location I have. So I'm just replacing with the location. So now first to start it, I'll go to this directory. Okay, and in this you have to go to bin folder, and there is a file called standalone.bat which you need to run. So basically I'm starting the JBoss application server. Okay, now I just wait until it comes up, and once it is coming up, then you can go to the location of the machine that you have installed, wherein it have installed the JBoss on my machine itself. So if you go to the port number called 9990, you can directly access, as well as you can give this IP address, which is the default IP address any machine will be considering as the local machine. So if you can go to any one of them, you can see that the JBoss application server will be accessible. Okay, so now if I go here, it's not yet started. Hmm, something is wrong. Do I have? Mhm. Okay, I'm not sure. I'm missing something. I think there's some configuration I have to set. But anyway, I'll show you this. Just remind me next class. The first thing I'll show you is I'll restart it again. I need to check what configuration is missing, because let's try once more. If it comes up, it should be good. If not, I'll skip it. I'll fix it, and tomorrow I'll show you. But the focus, what I'm trying to say is, so if you are using this particular plugin, then it will connect to this application server that we are running, and in that it will go ahead and deploy whatever the files that you have specified. So that is how, for calling this, you will be basically calling this particular plugin's goal, because when you want to directly call, you can see that with respect to each goal there is a specific activity that you can do. Because now, using the same plugin, I can start, or I can restart, or I can deploy a package, or I can undeploy. So that is how, with respect to each of the goal that you want to work on, you will be calling the specific keyword, which is the goal name. So in my case, if I want to do a deployment, then specifically I'll call this deploy, where it will connect to this application server, and in that, whatever that package you have given, it will deploy it. Okay, so this is one of the example that I wanted to show, but anyways, I'll try to fix it tomorrow. But at least to an overview, is it clear that you guys got what we are trying to do? Wherein now, if you see, we are using different plugin. So like this, whenever you have different requirement to work on a specific tool, you will be using a particular plugin, and with that you will give all the details, and based on how you want to call, you will be accessing it. Okay,